Welcome to the Sanity Project Podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project Podcast. You are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, sanity, and entrepreneurial success. And our guest today it's a nice surprise. I have for you David Hollenbach, who is a retired fire department battalion chief. And I bet you never thought you'd have one of those. He is the author of Fireproof, Your Grand Strategy for Transforming Failure into Fuel for Your Future. A motivational speaker, coach, and mentor. He owns and operates David Hollenbach Consulting, LLC, and hosts the popular podcast From Embers to Excellence. Welcome to the show, David Hollenbach.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm grateful that you are here because it's interesting. It's interesting the array of guests that exist across the podcast world. I'm not talking about, murder or music or anything like that, where people are heavily sponsored to pay attention to TV shows and radio shows and other radio shows and so on. But I mean, this is, you were a fire department battalion chief. What is a fire department battalion chief?
Well, of course, I started off as a firefighter and I worked my way up, and ultimately, a battalion chief is a chief officer that's responsible for a battalion. And a battalion, in the context of the department I worked for, was 6 fire stations and the personnel that staffed those stations. That was my responsibility.
So when you were a little boy, did you decide then that you wanted to become a fireman?
I think so. I was sort of born into it. My dad was a firefighter. He did 44 years in the fire service.
Wow.
And I remember as a very, very little sliding down the fire pole at the station, sitting on the fire truck, hanging out at the fire station. It was just part of my life.
So you would consider it generational as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I think so. I actually, thought I would do something else when I got older. And then when I got out of the Navy, it was like it was right there, and it was something that I knew I'd be good at. And I was. It just seemed like it was in my blood.
Well, congratulations on that. You didn't have to search around for what am I going to be when I grow up kind of thing.
Well, no, I can't say that I didn't search around. I did try and find alternatives, but I just kept on coming back to the fire service.
Well, what alternatives did you touch on?
Oh, I considered becoming a pastor. I considered being a counselor, a teacher. I tried out a lot of different jobs. I did try my hand in the construction industry. I did concrete work, rain gutters, roofing, framing, did windows, and it's pretty hot here in Florida. So there was certain jobs that I tried out that would bring me inside, but I just can't stay still for some reason, so I needed more excitement in my life.
Yeah, but some of the possibilities that you just mentioned are all in alignment with what you did do as a battalion chief.
Yes, absolutely. It did prepare me for the different roles I had in the fire service.
Yeah, when I help people, because I work on a true calling premise when I talk to people about what they're doing, because some people are not in the right position. So even though they are whatever they are, they're they're related to the next step, your next step, an ultimate step. Well, actually not ultimate, because this is your ultimate step, being a leadership coach. But the ultimate step is to see what you were really, you were you wanted to be a pastor and a counselor, which is really adjacent to a commander, a chief.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And then whatever you learned, even in stepping into those other choices, are relatable to what you did for years. So how long were you a battalion chief?
I held that rank for a little over 6 years, and I left the fire service. I retired after 23 years.
Wow. Okay, I'll give you that. So, you deal with high stress environments. That's what you coach on. That's what you counsel on, and that's what you talk to large groups on. And what do you consider a high stress environment aside from a fire?
Well, I think that we've got to define stress, and in the context that I'm talking about, it's really any environment that can trigger that fight, flight, or freeze reaction, and where our amygdala hijacks our body and our brain, and depending on the environment that you're used to, that stressor could be related to a lot of different things, and it's not just fires and I don't know, accidents, that sort of thing that can create that fight, flight, or freeze response. And that is a physiological piece of who we are. And we have to understand that our body's response to stress is natural, and understanding it is how we can be better at overcoming the effects of stress.
Okay, so you adjust your coaching, your consulting to whatever level the client is on. I mean, because he or she could be highly stressed, which means, death is on the way, one way or another, or they're just overreacting. I don't mean to minimize what they're going through, but I'm just looking at from 0 to 100 kind of, or from 0 to 10 kind of thing. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. So if we're dealing with, easy for you if you've got somebody who's, at a 0 or a 2 situation when they are, getting or thinking about taking over another job or getting involved with another position in their company. You obviously have to handle them differently. I shouldn't use that word. Somebody told me it was an aggressive word. Isn't it an aggressive word? I don't know. I've been using it forever. I mean, so I'm obviously an aggressive person. So how do you handle someone who is, I'm making this up. You go to a place and then this dude, he's C-suite, and then he's getting a promotion, and then he's going to be the head of the company, making it up. And they're scared because they have a right to be. And, they want to have some tools to be able to deal with whatever happens. Do you ever have somebody similar to that, or am I out of my mind? Okay.
No. So that is actually very common. And I first have to kind of set the mindset where, and this is one of the things that I talk about. If you imagine everything that you have control over in this sphere, and everything that we have control over is how we respond to outside stimuli, right? We control our thoughts, our words, our deeds. We can try and control our health and our environment, but ultimately we don't have control over that. Outside of that sphere of control is our sphere of influence. That's, we can influence our environment. We can influence our health. We can influence our wealth. We can influence the people around us, but we have no control over any of that. And then outside of that sphere is everything that we have zero control over and zero influence over. And a lot of times, the most stressed out people tend to be focused on things that are outside of our control and outside of our influence. And if we can focus more on what we can control, that sphere will grow and our sphere of influence will grow. Now, then the tools that I talk about, and these are tools that were passed on to me as I was developing as a fire officer. And if we think of the context of, managing a large, complex incident where I was the incident commander, there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's a dangerous environment. And there are, I would say, parallels in the business world. Now, when we get overwhelmed because of the amount of stress that we're under, and it can be related to stress at home, financial stress, stress at work, but then there will be some event that really takes us to the top of our threshold, if not have us overflowing. And when that happens, that's when our amygdala can hijack our response, where we're going to be acting out of emotion, whatever emotion we're feeling at that time. It can be anger or sadness. But a lot of times it can come out pretty aggressive. So we have to catch ourselves when we're feeling that way, and identifying what our natural response to stress is important. So I talk to my clients about really identifying their response to stressors. And once we identify them, we name them and see what we could do to overcome them. And when we're feeling overwhelmed, one thing that I would coach other fire officers on and law enforcement officers is really taking a step back, like an actual physical step back, to just give yourself that mental space to maybe take in more information, to see a bigger picture. And then take what I called a tactical pause, where it's roughly about 60 seconds. And during that 60 seconds, do a cycle of box breathing. And box breathing is taking in a deep breath for 4 seconds, holding it for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds, holding it for 4 seconds, and then repeating that 3 more times. And it takes roughly 60 seconds. What that does is it oxygenates your blood, it calms your nervous system, and really allows your prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain that controls higher function, logic, and all that, it allows your prefrontal cortex to re-engage. And the next tool is the CAN report. CAN is an acronym for conditions, actions, and needs. Now, I would use that for myself, but I would also request it from people that I was leading, people that I had assigned interior functions where they were advancing a hose line into a burning building or something like that. Mm-hmm. Since I'm on the outside, I can't see what they're facing on the inside of the building. So I would ask I would raise that lieutenant on the radio and ask them to give me a can report. So they'd report back what their current conditions were, what actions were underway, and what additional resources they needed to overcome whatever it was that they were facing. And in my case, I would be looking at a much bigger picture and identifying what my current conditions were, what actions I had assigned to all of these units that are on scene, and what additional resources was I going to need moving forward. Relief for those crews that were operating in the environment that they're operating in. Maybe
so the CAN not only gives you an idea of what your crew, I'll call it a crew, is doing, but how you can help them, and also how somebody else is looking at you and canning you, for example.
Right.
Yes? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And so it took me a while to figure out that it was a useful tool in my personal life. Just giving yourself some time to identify those three things when you're facing an issue, and recognizing what we have control over and what we can influence. And all those things on the outside of that, if we just, relieve ourselves of expending energy on any of that, because, we're not going to change any of it.
No. And we can't. And I think that's part of the problem. People get frustrated about things they can't do anything about. And it's like, what a waste of energy is that?
Right.
They're better off going to bed, lying down, take a break, take a 5-minute pause, 10-minute pause, come back and look at things differently. Right. Hopefully.
Now these tools, they're for in the moment. We were talking earlier about how I managed leading these 6 fire stations, and I told you a little bit about developing those relationships and developing that trust, and that comes from getting to know the people that you're leading, identifying what their goals are, and helping them achieve them. That was a key piece of how things worked so well in my battalion, was just really going to those fire stations, training with them, talking with them, and being able to have empathy and having really self-awareness. How were they viewing me and the things that I said?
Right. That's an interesting perceptive thing to say, because just because you are giving them insights to things, whatever their goals are, you have to assume that, number one, they trust you, and number two, that, they trust you, because that's the key to everything, I think, in whatever we're all doing.
Yeah.
Trust.
And it's interesting. One of the classes that I would give in the Leadership Academy there in the department, it was on communication. And if you go back to Stoic philosophy, early Stoic philosophers are given credit for stating, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should be doing twice as much listening than you are talking. Mm-hmm. And that is one of those things that if you're in a leadership position, you can ask questions, but give time for the person to respond, and maybe even a little bit of extra time to really get to know them, because that empty space is where more sharing happens.
Yeah, and they have to recalibrate that information as it comes in to fit into how they've lived their lives up to that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a challenge in and of itself. No two ways about it. So you have your website, Hollenbach, HOLLENBACH, leadership.com. And I spell things because people can't spell anymore. And, well, they can't, it's like, and then your book, Fireproof, your grand strategy for transforming failure into fuel for your future. I think that's it. I've turned that page over 17 times. Okay. And then your podcast, From Embers to Excellence.
Yes.
And those are, everything is in alignment. And that's important.
Yes, ma'am.
And everything is on your website. So if people need anything, they can call you. They can check with all of your social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and TikTok. Oh, David, TikTok. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I clicked that on and I went, TikTok. And I've joined there, but I really haven't done anything much with that because it gets to be too much social media after a while.
Yes. I thankfully have been able to get somebody to manage my social media, and so far they're doing an amazing job. I really didn't have much on my TikTok until recently.
Oh, okay. All right. So you hired somebody to do that? Yeah, I'm thinking of that. People keep knocking at my door, euphemistically speaking, and, we will post for you. And oh God, just one more thing for me to concern myself with. But I'm thinking of that myself. So it's like, okay, you can do that better than I can because I don't care. I swear I don't care. There are days when I just want to go, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Well, everybody, I'm sorry, what?
I said, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot, and you just have to, hey, you don't have Twitter? Oh, here it is. It's first. Okay, you have it. Okay, so I want to remind people, go to his website, hollenbachleadership.com, HOLLENBACH, leadership.com. You will see information about his podcast. You will see information about his book, and you will see information about David himself. I want to thank you for being here today, David. This has been informative. And I think for people who might have had a similar path to yours, it will be helpful and beneficial on what they do next. And is there anything you want to say now before we go?
No, I just really appreciate you having me on your show and allowing me to share a few tools with your audience.
Oh, I thank you for being here because you're the type of guest that I like and who makes it easy, who fills out the form perfectly, and, we can go forward. I want to thank David Hollenbach for being here today, and I want everybody to, as I usually say in some part of the podcast or not, it's, after this podcast is over, listen to it again and listen to it where you can just listen, not have to worry about riding your bicycle, watching another YouTube performance by somebody, and take notes. And you can only do this with the yellow pad and a pen because you get that information on a different level, in a deeper level, and I think that that's what you need to do. So everybody do that. Listen to it for a second time because I'm sure you didn't retain all this information, but you'll get the details if you listen to it. And have a wonderful day, David. And I hope everything works out well for you.
Yes, thank you. Likewise.
Take care. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project Podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.